Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Quacks podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Dozer, and if you're new to the show, the mission here is to expose the quacks and gimmicks in the marketing industry while featuring some great marketers and entrepreneurs along the way. On this episode, I'm excited to welcome our guest, Bryce Bortscheller. Bryce is one of the founders and current creative director at the Iowa Media Company. This is the parent company behind Iowa Chill and Midwest versus Everybody. Bryce, thanks so much for joining the show.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Absolutely. So those listening may be familiar with Iowa Chill or Midwest versus Everybody on social media, but can you do a quick intro on who you are and what you do with the Iowa Media Company?
Yeah, so I am, like you said, creative director, making content for both the Iowa Chill and Midwest versus Everybody brands. And we can get into the weeds as much as you like about that, but we're making funny Midwest memes and jokes every day and trying to connect with an audience within the people in the region we know and in the greater Midwest. So
Yeah, and people love your content and your following definitely shows that for sure. So let's start kind of the early stages. What sparked that idea or inspiration for Iowa Chill and Midwest versus Everybody? I guess talk about the beginning of your journey there.
yeah, good question. It really started with kind of a funny route. It was a anonymous Twitter page in north central Iowa, Algona. The founder of the original channels, Nate Creeps, was kind of running the shit talking. I don't know if you can cuss on here, but kind of the shit
Absolutely. It's
posting
authentic, man.
page.
Do whatever you want. Yeah.
Um, and then he went to you and I, where we ended up meeting and kind of saw the general trends becoming more like broader Iowa, not so local to his original area. And at the time, if you want to go back 10 years now, when you and I were probably just finishing up high school and getting into college, Twitter was a very big thing. So a lot of the anonymous stuff was coming through Twitter. And then when he was getting photo and video stuff, it was also kind of the height of Snapchat. So a lot of that stuff got repurposed for Snapchat, and we really started to see a lot of traction on those two mediums.
Was Do It for State ever part of your affiliation?
So, no, but we had a lot of trailblazers like them who were able to kind of help us through what to do and what not to do. Um, some of the flavors from our early Iowa Chill days were definitely more on the risque side of things. Totally in line with the Do It for State. I'm schmacked. I'm sure the older following would relate to some of those, but we tried to toe the line between that kind of engaging and fun content that pretty much you'd see at a college party, and also something that wouldn't get us canceled because we saw that people like them were kind of maybe towing the line too far into the inappropriate content and ended up getting taken down. So we had some good examples of people and things not to do, as well as people that we wanted to emulate. So yeah, totally.
Yeah, I remember seeing the Do It for State stuff on my Snap stories. Definitely, they were towing the line there for sure.
Yep.
So talk about your process, Bryce. I guess for building up these brands online, you can talk about Iowa Chill or Midwest versus Everybody, but what does this look like at a high level? I guess how did you start building this from the ground up?
Yeah. So I'll take it back to Twitter to Snapchat to me and Nate were kind of the original content creators back in like 2017, 18. You see the growth of Instagram, you see the growth of Facebook, and we basically just took the same kind of content creation um, pillars, I guess you could say, the way that we were going about our business on the other platforms and trying to best work that content into the next medium. So through 18, 19, 20, we had significant growth on Facebook, which became very quickly our biggest following. And then right around that same time, we saw that a lot of the roots and the content we were making for Iowa resonated with people outside the state. So that's where the Midwest versus Everybody was born. And we saw significant kind of exponential growth on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram for that brand. So that was kind of the birth of something much larger than our original Iowa Chill baby, which we still hold near and dear to our heart. But yeah, it's really, I think that if there's something to take away and we can get into, things to do and not to do later on, maybe I think that it was for us sticking so true to rural Iowa and Midwest roots, things that we can all relate to as we grew up and drove through cornfields and found things to do on the weekends and your dad drank a certain beer and you probably grew up wanting to drink that same beer, just very, sometimes nostalgic, but really just staying true to our roots and what we knew as people growing up in this region.
Yeah. I'm a small town Iowa kid for sure. And so a lot of your content resonates with what I had in my childhood too. So it really makes a lot of sense. So Facebook, obviously you guys started there, but the organic traffic of that, especially for like a business page organically, as you and I both probably know, it's declined quite a bit
Yeah.
since it's
Yep.
early days. So what are some social platforms are you most bullish on right now, I guess, in 2024 and beyond?
Yeah. So, I've kind of just been almost building that timeline of the different socials as they became kind of early and then reach their height. And, we're trying to follow, of course, as all these attention spans shift onto a certain medium. The last 5 years, it's been TikTok. And, with recent regulations, we'll see where that goes. But we're still going to be bullish on pretty much everything. I think the one thing that we've done really well that I see other brands not do very well is that we're strong on a lot of fronts. So if one goes down, we have other mediums to keep creating on. So truly, I'd say our weakest one is YouTube, and that is mostly because we identify as a non-personal page influence brand, and that means we're not front-facing. We have very little of myself and partners and people in our team that are making content for the Iowa Chill brand. So very little name and face recognition, and that at some level has limited our ability to get on YouTube and make that personal content. So to kind of a long-winded way of saying, like, I'd like to get into that space a little bit more, get into the podcasting, get into YouTube, but truly we want to stay strong on every platform, regardless of whether or not the United States government says you no longer can create on TikTok. We still plan on making TikTok videos and Instagram reels and all that stuff, just because you never know what might happen.
Yeah, and you can repurpose those short form videos on a lot of platforms, YouTube Shorts, Instagram, LinkedIn. I mean, whatever other platforms
Yeah.
like that short form content, as you and I both know. But also, I want to ask you this, Bryce, because algorithms are constantly changing, right? So, what are you doing to mitigate an algorithm update on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or let's say, God forbid, one of your channels got shut down for whatever reason, because this can happen regardless of if you're following policies or not.
Yeah.
What is kind of your mitigation plan there? Or how are you getting over the rented traffic phase versus trying to own that traffic?
In some ways, we're creating polls and gamifying ways for our audience to interact with the content to then lend an email or phone number. We had a very successful March Madness bracket. The people in Iowa get pretty pumped up when there's an Iowa Drake or UNI representative in the tournament. And we had 500 to 1,000 people in that tournament this year. And we were able to capture tons of data. And there's ways that we like to do that to then sit on it and use obviously in a way that makes the most sense for the following. We're, I think, like everybody else in the world, trying to make the data that we have the most useful and not over inundate the audience that we've captured with generic sales emails and text messages. So we're always, the other part of that is we're always creating. We're making sure that each platform is strong because one could be gone tomorrow. And we're building our team so that we have a diverse offering so that people no longer want the traditional meme style Dogecoin dog meme anymore. It's like, that's okay because now we have one or two content creators that like making the TikTok or real trend video. So a couple different things. We're growing the team, we're creating every day and strengthening that muscle. And we're also implementing ways to capture the data.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about monetization now, because obviously all those likes and retweets and shares, like that makes you feel good. It hits the dopamine, right? But it doesn't necessarily pay the bills. So talk about how you guys are monetizing, and you don't have to give up all your secret sauce, but what's the monetization strategy behind Iowa Chill and Midwest versus everybody?
Yeah, obviously from day one, what our goal was is to figure out the best ways to monetize. And around the 2017-18 time period, I felt like I saw personally a lot more brands figuring out the best way to turn viewership into dollars. And
I think Barstool is a great example of that.
Barstool was there's the I'm Schmacked and the Do It for States that were like the not to do's, and Barstool was like, the gold standard of what to do. I think they were like the social media SNL where they contractually got people involved and turned over a ton of talent in a way that was benefiting the brand, but also kind of let people do what they were meant to do if they blew up and needed to get out of there. I'm glad you brought them up because that was a huge, I think, breakthrough for the space. But around that time, I felt like a lot of people were starting to emulate what they were doing. They realized that, there is a way to break this down. I think the CPM model that we now run off got more popular in that way. I think traditional marketing and social kind of blended that to kind of a way that I think everyone understood. We really felt that Iowa and the Midwest brands that we wanted to work with, what we called the perfect partner, it took a minute for them to understand what value we were bringing to their campaigns. Everyone was doing paid search. Everyone was building a new website and realizing that social media can drive traffic to your website. But I think we always knew it went a little deeper than that, and that having a brand, a personal or non-personal like ourselves, endorsing your product, your service is very valuable. So I mentioned it, but we do go off of the CPM model. We aggregate basically impressions across all of our platforms for a campaign term length. And
And this is the influencer model,
this
correct?
is the
Like the
influencer
influencer
model.
marketing model?
Yep.
Got it.
Yep. So we basically estimate how many posts it will take to reach a certain impression count to then, hit your goal for, let's say, the new rain storm Atlantic Bottling is pushing into stores coming in May. Um, yeah, we work with what we call perfect partners and try to blend like the right amount of impressions and work with their budget to basically form a deal. The other
Yeah, and
side of it,
you guys do
and
merch
the other
too,
side
right? I
of
was
it
going
is
to bring up
merchandise.
merch.
So
Okay.
that was the first thing we did. I think we started on WooCommerce or a Squarespace store. We've moved over to Shopify. And that's just, keeps the lights on. I think everybody and their mom these days does some sort of t-shirt shop, but it's been strong. We've got a loyal following, and it's so fun to go around towns and see a bad day to be a beer shirt or,
I was just going to ask you
yeah,
about
yeah,
that. That was probably one of your best sellers, wasn't it?
yeah.
Bad day to be a beer in XYZ city.
Yeah, that one we still see around at tailgates or on the St. Patty's front when we're out and about and we see the little shamrock. Yeah, that one was by far our most viral for Iowa Chill, and then there was one just with a "Oops, sorry." If you're not Midwestern, you wouldn't understand, but there was a generic "Oops, sorry" sweatshirt that did numbers for the Midwest versus everybody. So yeah, that one is always keeping the lights on as well.
That's cool. Yeah, people love to resonate with those types of things from the Midwest, as you know. So let's talk about some of your content creation tips. You don't have to give all the secret sauce here, but if you had 2 or 3 tips for content creation and how to scale and how to create, an effective brand with a large following, what would you provide for listeners?
I think first and foremost, in a very, very saturated content world we're living in, pick a focus. I think this is a good example of like you've picked a lane to go down to find people in the space that make a lot of sense for this topic. And I think everybody should think less broad and go very narrow at first, and then branch out. Once you kind of find a theme and kind of execute at a high level on that theme, people come back and revisit your page and share, retweet, repost, stitch, whatever medium you're on, and they know what they're going to get when you're first creating. And I think that's really important when you're starting. I'm not going to speak too much from the personal influence side. I know that you've had influencers on the podcast before. I don't personally do a lot of that yet. It's something I hope to do very soon. But from our angle, we've stayed very true to what we call content pillars. We have a brand which is Iowa, we have a brand which is the Midwest, and we stay within that lane, like foods, language, types of vacations you might have gone on, Iowa State Fair, and the things that you might see there. Like we really niche down into a very specific content cycle, and people know that when they see something from us, it's probably something that they've experienced or resonate with coming from a small town or visiting the big town like Des Moines. So I think really the main thing is getting specific and then doing it every day so that you strengthen that muscle.
Yeah, consistency is definitely big too. And I've noticed, at least for me, the listicle format tends to do
Mhm.
well. 5 things you didn't know about this city in
Yep.
Iowa, 5 things about this state you didn't know, right? The listicle, because it gets people engaged right away. Oh, what are those 5 things?
Yep.
And then they're spending more time on the platform.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's we can get in the super weeds and try to figure out how to hack the certain algorithms. I think one thing is true across all mediums is that they're trying to get you to stay on that platform as long as possible. If you're creating that list format and you're creating that swipe across piece of content, they're staying on your feed and your page longer. They're going to rank you higher. I think that's at some level hypothesis, but I think there's enough data out there that people want you to create content that makes people stay on their app longer. So, totally true.
Absolutely. So, what is the end goal then for Iowa Chill and Midwest versus everybody? Do you have anything in mind for the future of these
Yeah,
brands?
we'd love to continue to partner with content creators on the personal side, the traditional personal influencer, and strengthen those relationships and help almost expand what we're doing. If they fit in our lane, how do we help them get more followers? How do we get them in front of some of their perfect partners? And also, can we expand our brands from a regional level? Is there a potential for Minnesota Chill and Ohio Chill, or is there a whole different angle? Do we want to go and buy up existing um, what's the word I'm looking for? Existing meme pages that, maybe offer a little different flavor than what we have, but because we're in the space, we may know how to operate that channel and monetize it. So there's a few different angles. I think I already mentioned that we'd like to get more bullish on YouTube and get that podcast started. So there's always so many things that we'd like to do. We're really at this moment trying to hone in on what we're doing very good at, which is monetizing our current brands and strengthening the partnerships around the state and the region.
Yeah, as a fellow entrepreneur, there's never nothing to do. There's a
Yep.
million things to do. It's about priorities and what pays the bills and how to move upward and
Yep.
scale. So let's talk about AI now. I want to transition to AI a little bit. I did see one of your posts about you did like AI images of cities or football stadiums lately. That was one that I saw pop up on my feed. So talk about your experience using AI for both brands. I guess what tools are you using? How are you leveraging it right now?
Yeah, personally, that's the extent that I'm using it. I know that we have team members doing all kinds of things, integrations with Excel, and creating language models. And I mean, there's a host of different ways that people in our team are using it. I'm making images out of Bing AI. I am not doing a ton yet. We've experimented, of course, with some of the GPT caption generation. Um, we're always playing around with it, trying to find ways to make it work for us. I may be forgetting something, but on that front, I'm so much in the creator mode that's really the extent that I'm using it at this time.
So you said DALI for the images. Have you tried like Adobe Firefly or Midjourney just to compare what you can get with? You're using Bing, so that's powered by DALI. Have you
Golly.
tried these other image generators to see what it gets in comparison?
I believe we started with Midjourney. I may be getting that wrong, but there was some plugins on our Discord actually that was kind of like the first iterations, maybe a year and a half ago. Um, Trying to think what else. Canva. We use Canva every day, and they have their own version of AI. So, I mean, yes, we've kind of experimented with a host of them. For this time period, Bing has worked just fine for what we're doing.
Are you familiar with Sora, which is OpenAI's new video model, text to video model?
I'm not actually.
Yeah, look this up after the show, but that's their new text to video model. So I'm curious maybe if you've had any thoughts on how you guys could leverage AI video where you could take an AI video from some random town in Iowa or any other state in the Midwest and maybe purpose content around those AI generated videos that look very realistic instead of driving out there or hiring someone to film it yourself. So I think it's very interesting. There's a lot you could probably do with
Yeah,
that.
it's so interesting to see where it will go. I mean, you just listed a very real life example for us. We've seen a ton of personal influencers going around the state of Iowa and just showcasing like a new bar that's opened or like 5 things to do in Mason City kind of thing. So I'd be very curious to see where that turns into and what that evolves into. Um, yeah, I know that we had an intern make a faceless YouTube video. We've had, you know, people in our network make AI generated captions for videos. So there's all kinds of integrations. I wouldn't say that we're industry experts, but we're always playing around with different ways to make our lives easier.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's transition to Quacks, Bryce. This is the Marketing Quacks podcast after all. So there's a ton of gimmicks in the content creation world. So I want to hear, what are your favorite marketing tricks or gimmicks in your space that you see?
I think that, off the top of my head, I can't think of a ton, but I remember working for, before we had really monetized Iowa Chill and Midwest versus Everybody and gotten our feet underneath of us on that side of things. We were working with a lot of individual brands on basically being their social media consultant. And you hear so many bad things out there. Like, the corporate world doesn't create content that people want to ingest. And I think that that's pretty obvious. So, when we're making a piece of content for a client, we're integrating them not so much as an ad, but as an add-on to our piece of content. So I think that not so much a quack, but if you have a marketing manager or a CMO breathing down your neck and saying that you got to make content in a certain way, stay true to what you know and what you see getting a lot of views, because that's what people want to consume. I think you are kind of dead in the water if you make content that gets scrolled through within a second. So,
Yeah, no, that's very true. I see a lot of brands. They like, brand guides are important. I'm sure you guys have brand
of
guides
course,
too, but they stick to all these brand guides and like what they think is going to do good, never does good. They don't actually look at what's out there and what works in their industry and what's converting. I think that's a downfall for a lot of bigger
yep.
companies.
I think, we're fortunate enough to work with clients that understand that, and they truly let us, be the creatives on the side of that, and like own our channel and how their brand is represented. And that's due in part because we've been willing to build that relationship and earn the trust. I think, our conversation kind of sparked maybe one quack, and that's that you don't need a macro influencer to sell your product or your service. I think that there's a huge trend happening right now where a mom of 10,000 followers or even less with a lot of experience and willing to review products on an honest level is maybe where everyone's kind of going with this stuff. I think there's so much information out there. There's so many things that you can read. There's a brand guide for damn near everything. I think that there's a lot of truth in the mini or the nano and the micro influencer. Um, and I think that there's a lot of value in influencers in general because they're just giving you um, typically the most honest opinion about a product.
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite is the bait and switch or the clickbait.
Yeah.
But my number one quack in content are people that buy their way to the top. You can buy
Yep.
followers, buy likes, buy subscribers, and appear very credible. But smart brands can sniff through it with tools and whatever else. But you can buy your way to the top and fool a
It,
lot of people with social
yeah,
proof. People don't realize that.
it's hard to get away, and if you're showing a follower account, um, or you're showing that your account has a lot of followers for a different reason, just to basically like put it on your presentation when you're giving your TED talk. I don't care, but like you said, a lot of people these days, if you're going to try and do um, that influencer model, that CPM model, and sell viewership, you're not going to probably get very far. There's a lot of things that kind of expose you these days. So I totally agree.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's next then for Iowa Chill in terms of why should someone work with you versus the hundreds of other influencers out there? Like, what's your selling pitch to brands over why Iowa Chill or Midwest versus everybody over these other people?
Our biggest strength is that we have a very kind of like we were just talking about. We have real followers in a very specific market area, and that proves very valuable to Midwestern brands. So we tried to work with people that have roots, started here. Maybe they have store locations in the hundreds and thousands now across the region or the nation, but uh, you know they want to advertise with us, and
Yeah.
that's truly our biggest strength is that we have real followers in this region, and we make great content. So we have a model that we feel like we can deliver on, and um, they're going to get results.
Absolutely. I love it. So, Bryce, this has been fun. Any final notes that you would have for the audience, whether it's content creation tips, anything else about your brands, just any final notes that you want to share?
Nope. I follow Iowa Chill at Iowa Chill on all socials, and follow Midwest versus Everybody on all socials. I appreciate you spending 30 minutes with me. That was fun.
Absolutely. I was going to ask where people can find you online as my final question, but you just listed them off there.
Yeah, iowachill.com and midwestversuseverybody.com as well.
Perfect. And I'll leave links to all those in the show notes and give you some backlink juice too for your SEO. So, Bryce, thanks again for joining the show. And thanks to everyone for listening to this episode of the Marketing Quacks podcast. Be sure to tune in again for the next episode.